Welcome to Renewed Day by Day with Pastor Ralph LaRosa. Today, he will continue with our series, The Church in These Last Days. Pastor will proceed with the essentials of the faith. He will continue with 8 statements of faith, or what we believe as a local church.
Now we're studying some appendices, and we're studying 8 statements of faith on what we believe and why we believe it. And we started last week what we believe about the Bible, and this morning we're going to continue with what we believe about God, and then in future studies we will cover the other subjects you see in point 1. One of the things we'll do at the end is the church in these last days, because we certainly live in the last days, and we have to understand our purpose continues even in these last days and what we can expect in the near future, whether we live or whether we die. Okay, let's talk about God today. Now again, we gave you the Bible first, because without the Bible, you can become aware of God. Without the Bible, you can come to what we call God consciousness. And there are certain things you can understand about the universe, but the Bible is a specific, special revelation that tells us the truth about God. Okay, so let's look at a statement that describes the God of the Bible. This is what we call theology proper, and also the study of the Trinity. Okay, even the word God itself, the word G-O-D, in the original Hebrew in Genesis is in the plural. We'll look at that in a moment. God is a creator and ruler of the universe. He has eternally existed in 3 personalities: the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit. And these 3, listen carefully, are co-equal, even though they have different roles, and they do have a system of authority, and they do have different emphasis at different times, but they're co-equal and co-eternal. It is one God in 3 personalities. So in Genesis 1:1, in the very first book of the Bible, that's called the Book of Beginnings, in the very first book, in the very first verse, it's called "In the beginning, God." That doesn't mean God had a beginning. It means when time and space and matter began, God already existed. The word God here in the Hebrew is Elohim, E-L-O-H-I-M. And the I-M ending, even though it's a singular word in English, it's plural in the Hebrew. So in the beginning, not gods, but the God in 3 persons, created, and this is correct, the King James Version is right here, it started out with just one heaven. Now God is outside of time, space, and matter, and the heaven that he created was originally just space. There was no air in it, and there was no atmosphere, there was no stratosphere. It was just heaven, it was just space. There was no light. There was no water. There was none of these things. And the earth. Now the earth, in the beginning, as we will see, was water only. So let's look at it. Here's a paraphrase of Genesis 1:1 by Dr. Henry Morris. He's the founder of the modern creation science movement. And I had him as a professor, visiting professor, and we used his textbook, The Genesis Flood, and we used that book way back in 1973, Teacher Cindy and I. So let's look at it. Here's a paraphrase of Genesis 1:1. The transcendent, which means he's outside of mass, time, and the universe itself, space. Okay? He's omnipotent, which means he's all-powerful. And the word Godhead represents more than one personality in one person. Called into existence the space, mass, time, universe. Now, a part of this is the fact of natural laws. That's the only way we could ever study science. So in order for God to create this, he had to be supernatural. He had to be beyond natural. He had to be more powerful than natural because he set up the natural laws of the universe. Okay? So the universe at this point had time and space and mass, but no human, animal, or plant life. And even if you had humans and animals, they could not live or survive on this blob of water called Earth. Why? There was no light, no air, no land, and no life. Now, some people think that it was ice because there was no heat, because there was no light, but the fact is it was water, and how it stopped from freezing, we don't know, but many people speculate. But the fact is, both in Genesis and in 2 Peter, we know that it was water. And there's another word for ice, and we have the word hudor in the Greek, which is a translation from the Hebrew, and so we know it was water. Okay? Let's look at the barren planet, and nothing could possibly survive on it. There was nothing wrong with it, it just was not complete. Okay? There's 3 phrases that tell us the description of planet Earth. And think about this. Out of all of the planets in our solar system, out of all the stars in our galaxy, out of all of the universe, what does God focus on? He focuses on the Earth. Think about that. He focuses on one planet, not even the biggest planet. Now look at this. It was without form and void. And the Hebrew is tohu wabohu, okay? And tohu means empty, and wabohu means incomplete. So the earth was void and empty, and the reason, it was not finished yet. It was incomplete. Then there's darkness was on the face of the deep. Another indication that this was water and not ice. Darkness was on the face of the deep. The earth was simply a blob of water in darkness. Now, if you wonder why the earth was water and not ice, this is probably the secret. The Spirit of God was hovering over the face of the waters. He energized these waters. The word hovering is like an eagle hovering over her eggs, okay? And so the Spirit of God, God the Holy Spirit, was hovering over the face of not the ice, but of the waters. The reason I keep saying that is because the gap theory, some people teach that it was ice. Good people, by the way, people that really believe that because they didn't have more information. But today we have so many creation scientists and so many discoveries. I think it's beyond, it's for sure, it's water and not ice. The ice age was later after the flood. Okay, let's talk about this energized water. This is very important. It's really nice to have a description of the earth before there was any life, period. God was life, and in order to have life, God had to create life. But before he could create life, he had to prepare the planet for life. Look at Genesis 1:2. Here's the second verse in the book of beginnings. Now the earth, and again, the focus is on the earth. The earth was formless and empty, and darkness was over the surface of the deep. The surface of the deep, the word deep, is another description of water, okay? And of the Spirit of God, and once again, and the Spirit of God was hovering over the waters. Okay, now, in 2 Peter 3:5, it uses the word for water, hudor. That's the Greek word for water. So the earth was formed, listen, out of the water. Dry land did not appear to day 3. So when you hear phrases in the Bible, when it says, before the foundations of the earth probably became visible between day 1 and day 3. There was no dry land until day 3. This is important when you study angelology, when you study that the fact in the book of Job that the angels were there when the foundations of the earth was laid. They could have been created on day 1, day 2, or even day 3. Remember, everything was created fully finished, fully mature, fully adult. Man, woman, animals, plants, trees, everything. They already had their seeds in them. They didn't have to go through a growing process. They were complete the day they were created. Okay, so the earth was formed out of the water and by water.
Thank you for listening to Renewed Day by Day with Pastor Ralph LaRosa. Tomorrow, he will continue with the church in these last days and our 8 statements of faith. Until then, God bless you and stay healthy.